Señor Apache, may I stay in your house? I am afraid, asked the abandoned child to the Apache, and so began a night that would change two lives forever. The man, an aging warrior of a people who had lost much, and the boy, a trembling shadow of innocence abandoned to the cold winds of fate, stood at the edge of one another's existence like two stars colliding in a vast sky of loneliness, and the silence that followed was heavy with both hesitation and unspoken hope, for the child, barely 8, with dirt-streaked cheeks and eyes swollen from crying, had known little of safety, tossed from one cruel hand to another until finally left by the roadside, while the Apache, once a proud rider, a guardian of traditions, now an old man with no family, had built a life of solitude in the desert, carving out survival from dust, remembering stories whispered by ancestors. He looked down at the boy who clutched his own thin arms for warmth, and though instinct told him to guard his fragile peace, something deeper whispered that destiny had knocked upon his door, so he bent low, his weathered hand brushing the boy's shoulder gently, and in that moment the child flinched as though expecting a strike, but the Apache only said in his deep, calm voice, "Come inside, little one, the night is colder than your fear," and with that, the child followed, his tiny footsteps echoing like fragile promises across the wooden floor of a cabin that smelled of firewood and sage. The boy sat silently near the hearth, watching flames lick the air, and the man poured warm broth into a clay bowl, placing it carefully before him. But the boy hesitated, staring with suspicion as though the food too might betray him, until hunger tore through mistrust and he ate with trembling hands, tears of both relief and shame wetting his face, and the Apache watched quietly, recognizing in the boy's guarded eyes the same wounds carried by his people: betrayal, displacement, loss of trust. So when the child finally whispered, "Will you send me away in the morning?" the man answered slowly, "I do not send away those who come to me with truth in their eyes," and at this, the boy's heart cracked open just a little, though scars made it hard for him to believe. Days passed into weeks, and the boy began to learn the rhythm of the Apache's quiet life, gathering firewood, feeding the chickens, listening to the old man hum songs of a forgotten tongue, and though he rarely smiled, each small act of trust was a seed planted in soil that had long lain barren, until one morning, when the boy ran to fetch water from the well, he returned with a wildflower in his hand and placed it shyly on the table, saying, "It was alone. I thought it might want to stay here," and the Apache's eyes filled with a moisture the desert had long denied him, for in that simple gesture he saw the child's soul reaching for belonging. Yet the peace they found was not without shadows, for one afternoon, strangers came riding from the nearby town, men who recognized the boy as the child of a woman who had died months ago, and whose kin had cast him out as a burden. And they demanded he be returned, not out of love, but because he might serve as cheap labor on their farm, and the boy, hearing their harsh voices, clung desperately to the Apache's side, whispering with desperation, "Please, don't let them take me," and in that instant, the old man's spirit ignited like it had in battles of long ago, when he stood not for himself but for his people, so he faced the men with unflinching eyes and said, "This child is not yours to claim, for family is not of blood but of heart, and his heart is mine now," and though the men sneered, something in his voice carried the weight of generations, silencing their protests, and they left with curses, never to return. That night, under the silver light of the moon, the boy asked, "Why did you protect me when no one else did?" And the Apache placed a hand over the boy's chest, saying, "Because once, long ago, I too was left alone, and someone chose to protect me." When we carry forward the kindness given to us, we keep the fire of humanity alive, and the boy, for the first time in memory, smiled with a warmth that reached his eyes, a fragile flame that promised to grow. Seasons shifted, years unfolded, and the boy grew under the Apache's care, learning not only how to ride, fish, and build, but also how to listen to the earth, how to respect every living thing, how to carry dignity even in hardship, and though the world outside often judged them an old Apache with no kin, a boy of no name, they forged a bond stronger than the doubts of others, a family not by birth but by choice. The child who once shook with fear at every shadow became a young man who carried compassion as his greatest strength, for he had known darkness and thus cherished light, and one evening, when the Apache's hair had turned fully white and his steps had grown slow, he told the young man, "One day, you will stand where I now stand, and someone smaller, weaker, afraid, will ask you the same question you once asked me: can I stay with you? I am afraid. When that moment comes, promise me you will open your door," and with tears shining, the young man swore, "I promise," and years later, when the old Apache had returned to the ancestors and the cabin stood with only memories within its walls, a knock came on the door, soft but desperate, and a small voice whispered, "Please, may I stay?" "I am afraid," and the young man, now grown and strong, opened wide the door, his heart swelling with the legacy of compassion, and he knelt before the trembling child and answered with the same words that had once saved his soul, "Come inside, little one, the night is colder than your fear," and thus the cycle of love continued, a reminder that kindness is never wasted, that one act of protection can echo across generations, transforming despair into hope, abandonment into belonging, fear into family. And the story of a boy and an Apache became more than their own, it became a testament to humanity itself, teaching that even in the harshest deserts of life, a single choice to shelter another can plant flowers that bloom for eternity.